Hey everybody, this is Kyla at the MJC, back to do another section of the stipulation form with you guys. This time we're going to be working on the child support section, which is located on the second page of the stipulation. Before we get started, I just want to let you know, as ever, that this video isn't intended to be legal advice. It is a video after all, and so we aren't able to analyze your specific situation, tell you whether a stipulation is the form you should be filling out, whether a court will approve your stipulation, or whether a stipulation and what you've agreed to in it are in your best interest in a specific circumstance. If you do have those questions, you'll want to talk to an attorney and get some legal advice. If you're here in Milwaukee, you can do that for free at the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics. If you aren't in Milwaukee, you can talk to your local clerk of court to find out what resources are available for people who are representing themselves. All right, so on to the child support section. Now, just so you know ahead of time, the child support section is probably one of the hardest sections in any of the forms we fill out. So we'll go through it section by section. So you obviously only fill a section out if you're wanting to talk about child support. You'll click that you want to modify current financial orders, because child support is a financial order. And I say click, but of course, if you're handwriting, you can just check by hand. You aren't required to type the forms. So you indicate it's a financial order, because child support's a financial order, and then you're going to check A, child support, because this form addresses a lot of different kinds of financial orders, and so child support is the one we want to talk about. This first section right here wants to know what your current child support order is. And so you have three choices right at the beginning. You can either say that it is currently held open. Held open means that it's zero right now. That's some of that fancy lawyer language. You can check this box if your order is a specific number. And so for most of you who have a number that's ordered, it's going to be in this box, because typically courts order it as a specific number. The last one is pretty unusual, but for some of you, it's possible that your order was made as a percentage order. So don't confuse that. So if your court said, we're going to take 17% of your income, which is $250 a month, that's different than if they just said it's going to be 17% of whatever your income is. But if your order is that way, then you'll check this last box. So again, held open for zero. For most of you, it's going to be this box. And in our sample situation with John Smith and Jane Doe, we're going to be in this section, and we're going to put in what the current child support order is. So the current child support order is it's actually $340, and that is per month in the order that we're working from. And then here we're going to put who pays that amount. So in our case, that's paid by John, and John is John Smith, to Jane Doe. And then the last bit here wants to know if your order deviated. Deviated is fancy lawyer language for did it do something different than the traditional standard. So if my child support is supposed to be 17% of my income, and let's say that's again $340, but the court says they're going to do something different because I pay for health insurance. So they're going to give me a discount of $50 and I only ended up paying $290. That would be a deviation. Deviations seem to most commonly come up, at least in our clinic situation, when someone is paying for health insurance. You might pay a little bit less in child support if you're paying for health insurance. You might pay a little bit more if the other person is paying for private insurance. But there could be any deviation. So you can check your most recent order. Your most recent order will usually note if there's been a deviation. You also may remember being in court that they would have talked about a deviation. So most people aren't going to have a deviation from that percentage standard, so their court won't do something different than that. So we're just going to check A, because in John and Jane's case, they didn't deviate at all. The second section wants to know if they were to calculate child support brand new right now, what standard, and standard is just fancy lawyer language for what calculation, what standard would they use? And you can see we have 10 choices in this section, but we're only going to check one of these boxes. These boxes over here on the left-hand side are all percentage standards. So these will come into play if your order is that the child is placed primarily with one parent and you don't fit into any of these formulas that we're going to talk about in a minute. If so if you're in just the percentage standards, you're going to pick the one that's appropriate for the number of children you have together. If you have one child, you'll check this one, two this one, so on and so forth. So that's the percent ones over there. On the right-hand side, we have some specific formulas that come up in some situations. And I'll go through them just very quickly here. Split placement is when you and the other person have multiple children together. You have at least 2 kids together. One child lives with one parent and another child lives with the other parent. So think of it like the parent trap. That would have been split placement. Shared placement comes up when the person with less time has at least 92 overnights in a year. And I know that's kind of a confusing standard, but that's the one they use. So if the person who has less time has at least 92 overnights in a year, shared placement. Serial family formulas come up when the person who pays, so in our case, John is our payer, if John has multiple child support obligations, basically if he owes child support not just to Jane, but maybe to another mom that he has a child with, or to 2 other moms who he has children with, there is a calculation to make sure that that all gets paid out correctly. So if you have multiple kids with multiple different people, you might end up in that serial parent formula. The low income pair formula, it comes into play for people who have roughly $1,500 or less in monthly income. And the high income pair formula comes into play for people who have about $7,000 in income or more. So those are our side ones. I'm not going to go through how to calculate the formulas, but if you do believe you fit into one of those formulas, then you can go to the Department of Children and Families, the Wisconsin DCF's website. They have some really great resources about calculating all of these different formulas. Many of you will find that you're just in the percentage standards, and so that's what we're going to do for John and Jane. We're just going to go with the 17%. These 2 sections you don't have to do if you're in the percents. If you did one of these formulas, you'll include the information about the amount of time with each parent and all that sort of stuff. So here, line 3 now wants us to run our equation on the current income. So if we look back up here, we can see John's income that we reported back on that findings and basis section we talked about in a different video is $2,500 a month. So we want to take 17% of $2,500. So here, 2,500 times 0.17. It gives us $425. So that'd be $425 a month. And that would go on this line here, because we're telling them this is what the equation would say I owe right now. Now, don't worry, some people panic and they say they think the court's going to order this. Right now, we're just telling them what the standard says it should be. This isn't the number you're agreeing to. Next, and I should note, some counties want you to report the number weekly. So if you're supposed to report it weekly for your county, what you can do is take this monthly number, multiply it by 12, that's the number of months in a year, and divide by 52, the number of weeks in a year, and it gives us a weekly number. So we could end up with 9808. So here in Milwaukee, we do report them weekly, so I'm going to go ahead and change John and Jane's number, so that's that weekly number. And that'd be per week. And again, we're just going to say who pays it to who. So in our situation, from John to Jane. And of course, I'm putting the names, but as I mentioned in a previous video, if you want to put the relationship, so if you want to say father to mother or whatever, that's okay as well. Now here, most of you are probably thinking this is a lot of work at this point, and it is. But here is the section we've all been waiting for. Number 4 is where you're going to tell the court what you are actually agreeing to do. And you have 2 choices here. You can pick A. Under A, you're saying that you like this number. So if you look at this number we put in number 3 and you say, you know what, I love that number. I want that to be our new order, and this is what we're agreeing to. Then you would check A. And here at the Justice Center, we usually put the first of the next month for when it will begin. So I could do it like that if that's what John and Jane are agreeing to. But we find that most people don't want it to be that number. Some people do, but a lot of people want to do their own thing. And so that's where section B comes in. See, we have this word deviate again. So this is where we're saying we want to do something different than this number up in here in number 3. If the reason you want to do something different is because one of you is paying for health insurance, so again, maybe John is paying for health insurance, and so Jane wants to give him a discount, you would deal with that in number 1. I'm not going to go through filling out that section because we find most people fall into number 2. And that's any other reason, any reason other than medical and health expenses is going to go in number 2. And so what a lot of people put is just that the parties agree, or the parties agree to these changes. Or to this change, you could put. You can put whatever your reasoning is there. Again, the reason why you think support should be different than this number we put up here. And then you're going to put whether the deviation increases or decreases the standard. So if John and Jane wanted to agree for it to be $150 per week, they would say increases. But if the number you want it to be is less than this number, then you're going to say decreases. In our situation, John and Jane don't want there to be child support paid right now. They want it to be 0. So that's going to decrease this number by the whole amount. But do keep in mind, it doesn't have to be the whole amount there. You could, if John and Jane wanted it to be $50 per month, they could say 98 minus 48.08 gives us 50. They could do it that way. So you don't have to go to 0, but that's just what John and Jane are doing in this situation. And so then here, 98.08 minus 98.08 gives us 0. And this line here, this line that we're filling in now, this is what you're actually agreeing to. So everything up here is work that we have to do to get the form filled in correctly. But this is where you're actually putting what you're agreeing to. And again, that's reported per week. And we're still going to put paid from John to Jane because we're trying to tell the court to set John's to 0. And so if we don't indicate who pays it to who, they might not know that we're intending to take this $340 payment and now make it a payment of 0 per week. And we'll just add Jane here and the first of the next month. So that is the child support section. I hope that this video was helpful for you guys. As I said, this is a really difficult section in the forms. If you still have questions or need further assistance with this, we'd be happy to help you out at the Milwaukee Justice Center located in room G9 of the Milwaukee County Courthouse. All right, thank you all for watching.